if you'd like to join us in our chat room, you can go to SeattleNeighborhoodCrier.org and go to the SNC Live page, and then you can join the IRC group there to the chat. And Cindy.
Hello, I'm Cindy Barker. I'm going to be your host this evening, and I'll be introducing our guests later. Were we going to talk any of the other producers on today?
Yeah, Chaz Redmond, the civic engagement producer.
And our other regular producer is out of town. So tonight we're going to focus on emergency preparedness topics, and we have a special guest. And I'd like to introduce first Debbie Goetz. She's an education and training specialist with the Office of Emergency Management. And what we're going to do is let her introduce herself, give a little background. We're going to talk about what is the Office of Emergency Management and what does it do, how it fits in with the city structure, the state, and the region. And then we're going to spend a lot more time on what are the programs that the Office of Emergency Management offers that would be of benefit for you all to know about. So Debbie, why don't you go ahead and give us a few words of introduction?
Sure. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Debbie Goetz, and I am a training specialist with the Office of Emergency Management. I've been doing this for, about 7.5 years now. And primarily what I do morning, noon, and night, and on the weekends, I'm out in the community training and working with different neighborhood groups, business groups, with preschool teachers, with preschoolers, with just about anyone who has an interest in learning more about how to keep themselves safe and self-sufficient after disaster. So that's my day job, if you will. And I'm part of a staff of 14 individuals who make up the Seattle Office of Emergency Management. And we all have our special areas, and so education is mine. And within our office, we are responsible for the disaster response, recovery, coordination, planning, all of the different parts of emergency management for the city of Seattle. So an example, during an activation, our last activation was during May Day, we asked for several representatives from key departments to come down to the Emergency Operations Center, we call it the EOC, and we were activated in support of the work that the Seattle Police Department had in front of them to just make sure that everyone could stay safe during the May Day parade and other events going on that night. So by disaster, I am part of that core team, as are the other individuals in our office, and we form the central coordination group for city programs and infrastructure, services and infrastructure.
Okay, so that is a lot of stuff. Give us the picture of how the city, like let's say we have a big earthquake, all that planning that you do and the response and recovery plans that you have, how does that integrate as you move up the line? So with the county and then with the state and then with the region. So if we had a big disaster, how does that response tree up?
So what we do is we organize by emergency support functions. We use lots of acronyms in emergency management, but essentially by function. So if you are part of the infrastructure branch, or let's take something that is maybe a little bit more relatable, kind of in the mass care, human services, and what happens to people during disaster. If we needed to set up sheltering, or if we needed to provide basic needs for a number of people, then what we would do, as a city, we would first look internally within our other departments. The city is pretty robust, and so on a daily basis, the large departments handle a good deal of what comes down the pipe on any given event. So we first look internally to our own departments for our mutual aid. The city can provide its own mutual aid. When we run out of that, or there is no resource available, then we can kick it up a notch, if you will, and make a request through what we call the logistics section for for an item. So, for example, if there were hygiene kits that were in need, if we needed toothbrushes and clean socks for a shelter that we were opening, and there were no other toothbrushes and clean socks to be found in and among our departments, we would put the order in and see by contract if we could get some supplies in. If not, we can kick that up the line, and this would be kind of a very simplified example. But then we would say, King County, would you have any availability throughout the county for toothbrushes and socks? Or a more realistic example might be for like fuel supply and things like that.
Right.
And then we would look to the county for that, and then they could put out a call, and then we could move it up the line to the state as needed. In the case of the landslide, the Oso landslide that we had recently, we as a city sent many resources up to Snohomish County. They were really needing personnel to be not only in the field to do the active search and recovery, they also were looking for people to take a spot in their coordination center to also help out with public information that was being coordinated up in Snohomish County. And so we were able to fill that request, and that was a good thing for us to be able to do. So as a city, we like to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to realize that the city does have the ability to escalate demands, but part of that is it just takes time to figure out what do you have internal to the city that you're going to respond with versus what do you have to go outside and get up. So there's a lot of concern among people who think, shelters or water bladders are going to be delivered, within 15 minutes, and that's not really true because of how things have to, go up channels to actually find someone who's got the resource that you may not have stored or didn't anticipate needing or have already depleted in the first emergency response. So that was a good answer. That I wanted people to have that context of, before we come back down and talk just city, how we go out to the region if we need to. And so you touched on another really important point I want you to talk about. You said you were divided up into different sections. And so I know one of the key things in an emergency response is for the city to help guide its own departments in getting stuff. So why don't you talk about that in terms of how you guys might do a practice drill or something where you, in the EOC, use your planning and logistics branches to organize and inform the city departments?
Well, when we activate, many of our activations are for the winter weather. That winter weather by far causes more presidentially declared disasters than any other kind of natural disaster. And so we do get our share of those, and typically in the winter we will activate. And so the weather gives us the advantage of advanced warning, and it's something that we can track days ahead of time. So we are very closely tuned in to the routine and the additional weather reports that are coming across our desk. And when we see that things are getting to the point where, there might be some freezing weather coming, we want to gear up and lean forward, as we say. So in a weather kind of incident, our Seattle Department of Transportation does an outstanding job in their planning and response in the wintertime. They really look out on that weather report to see what's coming down the pike, and on a regular basis, well ahead of anything that we would do at the EOC, they really have their resources out in full force, and they really just kind of keep us informed of what's going on. When they see things are starting to escalate, maybe getting to the point where, well, this might be something that is of note, then we may do a conference call around the weather, and then we would at that point determine what departments do we feel would be needed for their expertise, for their resources, just to help with that coordination. So we will have that conference call, we will activate at a designated time, and people take their places essentially.
Yeah.
And so we fill the logistics. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I noticed that your winter weather is a really good example because warming shelters are very quickly brought up, and that's all part of that response as well.
It can be, yes, because we know that we have some vulnerable populations that may not have a place to stay warm, and so there's a regular system that kicks in so that folks can stay someplace overnight, not outside on the street when we know it gets really cold, and then we open up additional shelters as we need to. So it's a good coordinated event. Throughout the city, we have 28 departments, and we have, I want to say at this point, probably 150 to 200 city employees who are trained at some level to respond and report in to the Emergency Operations Center to take a role, and we really could not activate without them. It's a constant training effort that we want to do so that we always have people that really serve as our content experts in their area. So I've mentioned earlier human resources. They really are key in any kind of disaster that affects people, which is, after all, the very nature of disaster. But helping them are folks from our Department of Neighborhoods, from the Parks Department, at the Human Services table. We also have Seattle schools that we often coordinate with. We will also coordinate with the Red Cross, the Crisis Clinic 211, and social service agencies. We directly link in with all of their networks, so we can really share information and communication on a very consistent basis.
Okay. What we've started with is kind of what we call the emergency response pyramid, and it's kind of got different levels. And we started at the top of the pyramid with, the larger response that happens with few resources, like at a regional level. And then we talked about towards the middle of the pyramid, which are the city resources. Let's drop down and talk about the base of the pyramid, which is all the folks who are listening today, because if they're not prepared, then it makes everybody's job going up a little bit harder, because then you have to find more shelter for people who forgot to bolt their houses down in an earthquake, or people who didn't store the water or didn't have the kit. So I think we want to spend a lot of time today talking about the two main programs. I want to mention one of them, and then just in passing, because we'll bring another guest on to talk about that. But then the second program that you do a lot of training on. So let me cover CERT really quick, unless you want to cover it. I was just going to do an introduction to what CERT
Sure.
is.
Go ahead, and yeah, I can talk. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. So CERT stands for Citizens Emergency Response Teams. It is one of the training opportunities that people can have through the Office of Emergency Management, and they offer 2 of those classes a year, about 30 people per class. Hang on a second. Excuse me. And that is where you get a 6-week training course for being a responder. I'm going to have you talk about SNAP now, though, because CERT, I just wanted to put that as a little teaser, but since I'm going to keep coughing, apparently, I'd like you to go ahead and talk about your main program, which is SNAP.
Okay. Sure. You going to be okay? So SNAP is Seattle Neighborhoods Actively Prepare, and this is a way to just really simply organize with your neighbors, the people around you. And so the premise is pretty simple. We really just want people to get to know each other. And so whether they live in homes on a street, or in an apartment building, or in a condominium, or it's their work group or their service club. Are you going to be okay, Cindy? I'm worried about you. I want to make sure you're okay. Do we need to stop and call 911? I know first aid. I know first aid. I can. So we want people to really just get to know each other, because at a time of disaster, we always say it is who you are with, wherever you are, that whatever you're doing, those are the folks that are going to become your first first responders. And so the more you know about the people that you spend time with, the better connected you are, and ultimately the more coordinated a response you can make together to help other people. So that's what SNAP is, and really we break it down to find out who is around you, and say to each other, hey, do you think there's something to this preparedness thing? And decide on a meeting place. And after you get to your meeting place, then decide for yourselves, well, let's go check on other people. And that's a good thing that you can be doing. And then after you check on other people, then you can really just ramp up your response. You'll want to take care of anyone that's been injured. You'll want to control utilities and prevent any other fires. You'll want to do a damage assessment of what has happened in your immediate area. You'll want a way to tune in and get some outside information. So, but the very essence of it is really find out who's around you, decide to meet, and check on each other after disaster.
So how do people get involved in the SNAP program?
Well, it is all online, which is a nice thing. And so if you go to the seattle.gov/emergency website, and we might be able to pull that up here in just a minute, SNAP is on the left-hand side of that page. And if you click into that, it takes you through the 3 different sections of SNAP, of getting connected, getting organized, and it kind of walks you through all of the different steps.
Okay.
And, I don't know if people can see it or not, but
Let's see if I'll bring it up on my screen. Can we share that?
we can try.
Tell me when you can see it.
Yep, not coming up yet.
No? Okay. Okay, give us one more second. Okay.
So if you can't get to it on the website, then you could email us, and if you go to snap@seattle.gov, that's another way to ask. Oh, there it is. Ask for information. We have volunteers who go out, and they can, if you get a group together, we are happy to come out and do a presentation on the SNAP program, and we'll cover things like how do you keep yourself safe when the earth moves, depending on where you are and what you're doing. And we'll talk about the basics of preparedness, what families can have at home, and then we'll talk about the priority responses of an actual disaster and how each comes into play. And it's about an hour program, and it doesn't cost anything. So it's nice to have resources available that really, it does take a little bit of time and a little bit of commitment, but it's not going to cost you out of your pocketbook to attend a SNAP class or invite your neighbors in. It's just really wanting to get to know other people right around you who have an interest in what might happen and how you can better take care of each other. What I like about SNAP, though, is as you get to know your neighbors, you really do find out what is the knowledge and the skill and the resource that people bring just as everyday people. For example, you may not have any background in utility control, and that's fine. That's not your area. It's not something where active response is really something you're interested in. But if you, for example, like to just read books or magazines, then after disaster there's going to be a need for people who would just want to sit quietly with others, and I think being able to read and share time with other people in a nice quiet room is going to be a real service that you can provide to people that you may not otherwise really think of as coming together. Another way to do it would be around cooking. Who likes to cook? And if you think about an average neighborhood, an average apartment complex, if we have an extended power outage of any length, think about the food that's in everybody's collective freezers and refrigerators and pantries, and how will you feed people? Your own family is one, and with just your own refrigerator and freezer and pantry, but now think about everyone in your apartment building. Well, you could certainly make some pretty creative dishes, I think, and given people's natural inclination to want to, if they enjoy cooking and creating, that's a great outlet during a disaster for someone with those skills. So it isn't always the hard skills like the first aid skills and the utility skills. It's really the people skills that are just as important.
It really is the linking of people and finding out who can contribute in whatever the situation is. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Another great example would be someone who loves pets. And if you're a pet lover and if you have a pet, well, would you be able to host another pet? Maybe it's for someone, one of your neighbors who maybe wasn't able to make it back from work, and their pet is all alone in their home and things. So would you be willing to host another?
And
same with children, and parents don't make it home. Are there other parents in the neighborhood or in the building that could help out?
That's one of the other parts of doing the preparedness is, so if you are at work and your neighbor knows that you have a pet, you have a way to figure out how to help. And a lot of this also circles around senior citizens. If you know that there is, an elderly lady down the block, that at least is the place where a lot of people will think to go first and check and make sure that she's okay, because part of our care for our vulnerable seniors and people maybe who are in wheelchairs and other things, that connecting together afterwards to figure out just quickly what's the response, and then long term, if somebody doesn't have power. Christchurch was a really good example for people ended up not really having to evacuate out of their homes, but they were out of water and sewer for a long, long time. So it took a great community effort to deal with that situation.
Yeah, I'm sure that they came up with many creative solutions of how to take care of just basic necessities there. Yeah. There was an interesting story that came out of the condo complex that I lived in for about 20 years. We all got stuck down this long driveway during one of the winter storms, and it was too steep and it was freezing, iced over, and it's a private driveway, so no one's going to come and plow it from the city. And besides that, the city does not plow residential streets. We stick to the main arterials. And so this was a winter storm that we have had from time to time while everybody got stuck down there. And people started just getting really worried, I think, is what it was. But then worry turned to anger, and the anger came out as people are getting mad. Well, what are they getting mad about? Well, it's been 3 days. 3 days of what? We haven't gotten our mail for 3 days. What's going on? We need to call the media and there are people down here that are isolated. Well, we took that as a teachable moment, and we held a meeting after the storm, and I asked people, what was it that you really needed that you didn't have? Because fortunately the electricity had stayed on, so people were warm. They were just all stuck, and really what they said is, I had enough food in my fridge, I was able to stay warm, I had all of that, I really just wanted a knock at the door. I just wanted somebody else to know that I was here and I was okay, somebody to check on me. So that's how we got that team started, was we asked for volunteers. In the complex, there are 84 units in this condominium complex, and we said, if you're here, if you're willing, would you want to be able to just knock on a few doors and check on all of the neighbors in the 4 different buildings? Well, lo and behold, I got 6 to 8 volunteers that said, sure, I'd be willing to do that. So that was the first team that we formed, was around resident check. And then the second team that formed after that was the 4x4 team. After a day or two, people who had 4-wheel drive vehicles, they actually were able to get up that icy hill and then get back down. And so we asked the group, we said, would there be people, if you're willing, if you're here, that you would be willing to take a neighbor up to the grocery store for a gallon of milk, or to refill a prescription, or to get a newspaper, or buy a new book, or something like that? And so we, sure enough, we got 3 or 4 volunteers for that team. So that was actually how we organized. We started around winter storms, and then the third team that we formed, we had some able-bodied people there, and we said, if we get our ice and snow coming down, would we have a few people who would be willing to shovel snow and spread some of the de-icer? And so they said, sure, I'd be willing to do that. So that's how they formed down there, and it continues today. It's been a great way to organize. We had that teachable moment.
Well, that's actually a good question for the people who are thinking of organizing, and we'll move on and talk about apartments in a minute, but how will that condo unit sustain over the next couple of years? Because condos usually have a turnover. Do you guys, were you doing you had the winter prep moments? Did you have a potluck in the summer? How do you keep people connected even when it's not an emergency?
They usually have an annual meeting just before winter storm season, and that's a time when they review who's on the volunteer check team, who's on the 4x4 team, who's on the snow and ice team, and so it's a way to refresh. And I would have to say, in this kind of condominium complex, the board members are very active, and so there's a nice cohesion there, and they are all mostly connected by email. There's a couple of residents who don't have email, and so they have buddied up with someone who does, and so that's a great way to share skills and resources. So they stay connected that way, and it gives them, more than anything, it gives them a sense of community. It gives them a sense of connectedness, and I think that is the real benefit of SNAP, is if you are able to create that or to provide that, that goes a very long way toward people's sense of reassurance that they will be able to get through this because they won't become isolated.
Right.
And so between that, the connection, and the communication with family members and loved ones, those are two very key pieces that we know and have seen here in Seattle and across the United States. That is how people get through, is through their connections that they have.
So for people who are sitting out there and sitting in our apartment buildings, because there's a great deal of those in Seattle, and we've talked to multiple people who are trying to figure out how to do that. Sometimes there is a building management who, like your board, who is willing to possibly do that. But in some cases, how would people think about organizing themselves in a 6 or 12-story apartment building? What would be some suggestions?
What I have seen, what the SNAP program kind of needs is, it needs that catalyst. So if you are in an apartment complex and if you are feeling kind of disconnected from the rest, I would say try and find someone, just at least one other person of like mind. And between the two of you, you can actually form a SNAP group with just the two of you. You're saying, if something happens, we agree to meet and we're going to check on each other. And believe it or not, you will have you'll have a catalyst there. You will get other people coming out the day of disaster, and then you'll just be connecting up and kind of talking it through. We kind of call it shooting from the hip as you go. If you can keep your priority tasks in mind of first controlling utilities and preventing fire, and then checking on people and taking care of people, you're well on your way to really creating that spontaneous response on the fly. Mm-hmm. And I think we will also see a good bit of that in Seattle when we do get our big disaster.
But before that, you guys are willing to come out if an apartment building does get, what's your minimum, 15 people?
Sure, yeah. 15, 20, 10 people. We'll come out and talk to you. No worries.
And that's good for people to know, because I know that there are like-minded people, but some people will go, we're the only two people in this 15-story building and we're thinking about this, but you can leverage your guys' professional aid in that.
Sure, yeah. We are always happy to have a conversation, and a lot of times you will know your complex best. And so what is it that will spark people's interest? Can you have a potluck? Is it a book swap? Is it a joint garage sale? Is it a barbecue? What is it that will spark people's interest? Is it a community cleanup where everybody gets together and gets to pick pick out weeds or pick weeds or weed the gardens or something like that. You want to be inventive. Maybe it's a wine tasting. Maybe it's a chocolate tasting.
Ooh, I like the wine
Use your
tasting.
imagination. Use your imagination. See what you can do. Maybe it's around hobbies. Maybe it's around bikes. Maybe it's around cooking. Maybe it's around pet care. Something like that.
But they can go to your website and they can pull off the materials that would help them
Sure.
take those basic common interests and start to figure out how to form a SNAP group, right?
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And we're here to help. So.
Well, it seemed to me there was a question off of that, and I'm having a blank moment here. What I was trying to think of is the training that you give around how to shut off valves. You do that in a hands-on class still, and that's posted on your website.
It is, yeah. So if you go to, again, the seattle.gov/emergency website, not only is the SNAP information all over there on the left-hand side, it's got its own logo and icon, but one of the other tabs is training and events. And if you click on that, then you'll see all of the classes that we're doing, all free, that we'll be sharing in the Seattle libraries, different locations throughout the month, different topic every month. So this month we are doing the utility control class.
Well, I'd like you to go back also and tell people about the class you offered last week, or last month, which was the apps class.
Oh, the turn your smartphone into a safety tool. Yes. So what are the best apps to download onto your smartphone? That was a very well attended class. I think it's a fresh topic. It's something that people want to know about, and so we have a list of apps. These aren't the only apps out there, but they are some of the apps that we find particularly helpful for personal preparedness, as well as these are some of the apps that we use, the very same apps, in the Emergency Operations Center when we're activated. So if I can just take an aside, if you go back to the, not to the Seattle web page, it's part of the City of Seattle website, but it's the alerts page. So it's alerts.seattle.gov. And if you go to that site, that is a running tally. During an activation, you will see a compilation of all of the different departments who are tweeting and posting and news releases, anything that's coming out pertinent to that response. We have a page that congregates all of that. And one of the tabs under the alerts.seattle.gov page is to links and resources. And I want to point that out to people. The links and resources are really helpful on a daily basis. There's Rain Watch and Snow Watch and Wind Watch, I think, is another one. And we have a number of different sources that we are using in real time to track where what the traffic is doing out in different parts of Seattle. So we can look at traffic cameras, we can look at power outage maps, we can get real-time bus information, things like that. We can link into the University of Washington. So a whole host of resources that are very, very helpful. So and they do have that optimized for a smartphone. So you can download that to your smartphone and carry that with you wherever you are. So very helpful.
You want to repeat that address one more time?
It is alerts.seattle.gov.
Thank you.
And so you can get to that on just a regular laptop computer, or you can search it in your Play Store, or just download it onto your smartphone.
I see we've got a question from the audience, and it's what about senior housing, and who takes care of them, and how are they rolled into SNAP or CERT?
Well, senior housing, there's all kinds of variations of senior housing. So independent senior apartments are independent people, and so their preparedness would really be up to them as an individual. They may have some assistance with a resident manager, but ultimately it's really like living in any apartment complex. They could be rolled into CERT if they wanted, or SNAP, excuse me. They could become their own SNAP group. They could sign up for the CERT training that is offered twice a year, just like anyone else. There are other senior housing complex. There's other housing that is more assisted living, and they have some staff that can help provide a little bit of the support that they may need around, particularly around medication and other health conditions. But again, the bottom line, we feel it's always, as an individual, you want to do as much as you can for yourself, and we really don't have the resources as a city to say, oh, you don't have to do anything, we will take care of you. It's that just isn't the case. I think we are doing a program and providing training so that people can take just even little steps that can provide their own level of self-sufficiency and safety.
Okay, I've sort of lost myself on my screen, so I got confused by that question. I was looking for the help and okay signs. Somebody had asked a question to see if they could see what those were. But I think what I wanted to do was also, I had the calendar of events up for a minute, and it looks like you've got a really interesting series coming up in September, which is pet preparedness. Just as the neighbor cat walked in, is going to start meowing. Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's going to be a great class. That class is going to be taught by one of our experts from the Seattle Animal Shelter, and we'll have all the tips that you need to know to keep your pet safe during disaster, as well as what to do ahead of time and what to expect afterwards as well. So we'll have some new materials coming out for that. I look forward to that class. I think it'll be really a fun class as well.
Great. I want to take a couple minutes because I think we're coming within 10 minutes of the end of our show here, and we talked the top of the pyramid, which is a regional response, the city response, the base of the pyramid, which is all the folks who get involved in preparedness programs. I want to actually mention the kind of middle of the pyramid, which is community level preparedness, and we have the program called the Seattle Emergency Communication Hubs. And I particularly wanted to talk about that for just a minute because we have a drill coming up on this coming Saturday. It's going to be from 9 to 12. We have 12 different hubs across the city of Seattle practicing on this. What we've set up as our scenario is an earthquake and not earthquake, that was last year, a lahar and ashfall that have come from a Mount Rainier explosion. And so I'm going to read off the hubs that are participating so that if folks are listening out there and are able to get one of these locations on Saturday, we really welcome citizen actors who can come help us practice, because what we try and do is, as Debbie talked earlier, she wants, you want to make sure people know you're okay, and then once you're okay, usually people want to know how they can help other people. So that's what we try and do is make those links between people who have something to offer and people who are looking for shelter or information or knowing which pharmacy have opened. So here are the hubs that are participating. Loyal Heights Park, Ballard Gilman Park, Shilshole Marina. On Capitol Hill, the the Jubilee Women's Center is going to be opening. In Broadview, the Luther Memorial Park. In Lake City, it'll be at the Fred Meyer South parking lot. Maple Leaf Park is going to have a hub, as will Magnolia West Playfield and the West Queen Anne Playfield. Rainier Beach is going to have their hub at the United Methodist Church. And in West Seattle, there will be 2 hubs. Both of them will be co-located at Urkelini Park. They'll just be on opposite ends of the park. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. Saturday, May 17th from 9 to noon, and show up either for the whole time or part of it. Anything works. So Debbie, any other things you want to cover about the Office of Emergency Management and things that you might want to throw out for possible ideas for future shows that you might want to talk about?
Oh boy, well I think you put me on the spot right here.
Well, that's because I finally.
Here's what I will throw out is there's lots of different ways to get involved with our office. So if anyone is interested in volunteering and helping us get out to teach people, we would really welcome that. I can get you connected up with our volunteer coordinator in our office. If you would like to host a program in your agency, we would love that. What we're really wanting to do is a lot of those 30-minute workshops that we are offering in the libraries, those are really portable classes, and we can bring those into a community center or into a church or into a service provider. And so if you have parent groups that meet together or throughout the week, or if you have other, whatever your client base is, if you'd like to offer a training, we would welcome that opportunity. So just feel free to contact us. And the best way to get us is the snap@seattle.gov email. So just email us, let us know what your question is. We'll try and do our best to fill the need.
And actually, that's a really good point. You guys put out a fantastic newsletter, electronic newsletter, and I think you've got over 5,000 people on it now. So,
not quite. Yeah, we've got about 4,800.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, talk about
We're
what's
getting
in there,
close.
because people, even if they don't, they can sign up for that, even if they're not part of a SNAP group, right?
Oh, absolutely, sure. It's open to anybody. And this is really the way that we announce our skills classes, the CERT training that you mentioned earlier that's offered twice a year. We will make an announcement on that. We will also give you what we call the SNAP advisory from time to time when we know that there is super cold weather coming or super hot weather coming or something to be aware of. For example, in October, we're having the Great Shakeout. So we use that newsletter quite a bit just to get the word out and be very consistent about what we're doing and saying.
One of the things I've found out is that the people who are on the newsletter like it because sometimes those classes, especially the Urban Light Search and Rescue, fill up really fast. So people jump on that newsletter as soon as they see it come out. So that's one of the advantages of subscribing.
Yeah. Yep. And the best part is you can subscribe yourself. We can help subscribe you. You can unsubscribe yourself if you want to as well. So lots of options there.
Great. I think I need to check in with our producer and see if we needed to leave any time for general community announcements if anything's coming up. Let me do a double check here.
Okay, and it's Chester again, or Chet. And let me get the screen up. It's a reminder for Friday, May 17th or 16th is Bike to Work Day.
Oh, good.
Please be careful when you're out and about. If you're driving, watch out for those bikes. And then SDOT is having a survey on walking and biking, and there's a free coffee.
That's great.
For events that you can go talk to the SDOT about walking and biking in your community. And then there's the events calendar from the Seattle government here, and it's seattle.gov/calendar, and all these links will be on the show notes at seattleneighborhoodcrier.org.
I know one I want to add is this coming, because living in West Seattle, Alki Streets is this coming Sunday, which is the day that they close down Alki Beach Drive, and it's for bikers and walkers only. There's a Alki Run in the morning, and then at 11 o'clock the Alki Streets Festival actually starts, and the Seattle Emergency Communication Hubs will have a booth there, so please stop in and say hello if you want. Oh, there you go.
All right, and we'd also like to put a thank you out to Holiday Inn, who helped give us space for our meetings at the very beginning of setting up the Seattle Neighborhood Crier. And we're going to do last rounds here. Chaz.
Well, tomorrow evening, Wednesday, at Youngstown, there's a budget hearing on civil rights and police. Bruce Harrell is holding that at Youngstown, so 6:30 tomorrow evening. So those of you that are interested in the budget, we have upcoming meetings, 3 of them. The City Council wants to hear your questions and answers about what, or your opinions about what the budget should be doing. So
I'd like to add on to that because part of Bruce Harrell's committee on that is also emergency preparedness rolls into that public safety. So there are some of us who are planning to go and ask for more money to give more emphasis to the CERT program, the SNAP program, more outreach to citizens, more help for low-income folks to build bags, So anybody who thinks that's a priority, that's a topic that's good for input to the Budget Committee as well.
All right, and we want to thank Debbie Goetz for coming on today and sharing the Office of Emergency Management. And that's it.
Thank you.
We're going to be live again next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks.